Hello and welcome back to Life Outside the Box. Today I have a special guest, my friend Kelly Akers. Hello, Kelly.
Hello.
Man, I have been looking forward to this, and then you and I were outside talking, waiting on Caleb to show up, and I got some stories that I didn't know about. I knew a little bit of your backstory. You did time in the federal pen.
Yes.
And so what I'd like to do is maybe, kind of tell me what your raising was like. What kind of home you grew up in?
So I grew up in a small town. My mom and dad's house was basically the party house.
Okay, all right.
It was a drug house. I knew there was alcohol and I knew there was weed. Looking back, there was probably a lot more I didn't know about. And as long as I never got in the way, I did pretty much whatever I wanted.
How old were you when you started noticing that?
3, 4, 5. I
Wow.
mean, it was young.
Yeah,
And,
that is young.
So they divorced, and my mom remarried my stepfather, and he was an addict, alcoholic. He was very sexually abusive. He started abusing me at a young age.
So stepdad.
Yeah. And so he was very abusive. I can remember when the abuse started, they would have fights and he would leave and not come back. And then over the years, the abuse just grew. I mean, I've seen him almost try to kill my mom. I could remember laying at night in fear of what was going to happen.
Right.
I have 2 half-brothers, and that was their dad. We had the same mom, and I would get up and...
Were they younger or older?
They're younger.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'd get up and pack her bag for work, get our stuff for school, put it in the car. Was times that I called people to come rescue us,
Wow.
One night I beat him with a baseball bat.
How old were you when you did that?
Maybe 8 or 9.
Wow.
And I can remember being so mad I didn't kill him. That's how much fear I had growing up.
Right.
And they ended up getting a divorce. It was pretty tragic. I mean, he pulled a gun to my mom's head, and there's a whole lot to that story.
So life was not a bed of roses for you, so to speak.
No, I didn't have a normal childhood. I was the
Not at
adult.
all. Yeah.
I cooked for my brothers. After they got divorced, there would be nights my mom wouldn't come home. She'd stay at the bar, and I would get me and my brothers up for school, call somebody to come get us.
Wow.
And, that was her addiction.
Right.
That's really not who she was, but that was her addiction.
So you had nothing that someone can say, well, I had a normal childhood.
Oh, no.
And it may have seemed normal to you at the time because you had nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
So that was probably the way you thought everybody lived.
Well, I can remember in kindergarten telling people about weed and rolling papers because I thought everybody smoked weed. I didn't know that there was people out there that didn't smoke weed.
Yeah, yeah.
You talk about some trouble.
So I'm assuming they get divorced. Did he ever get convicted or go to prison for any of that? Or
No, he didn't.
So
he's actually, I've seen him on a regular basis.
Really?
With my brothers, and I'll share more about that in him and kind of later in my testimony.
Okay.
But
yeah.
So my dad was in his addiction, women, it never came around much.
Yeah.
And so I had this sick view of love. See, my dad said he loved me, but he never came around.
Yeah, yeah.
My mom said she loved me, but she didn't protect me from my stepfather.
Right.
And then My stepfather said he loved me, but he was sexually abusing me.
That's a pretty construed
Yeah.
thing of love right there.
Yeah. So 6th grade, I started selling weed, selling it. Drank all the time, became very sexually active, 6th grade.
Wow.
I was searching for something and I didn't know what it was.
Right. Love?
Yeah, but I didn't know where to get it and what love really was
Right.
because of where I was raised.
Yeah.
And so I became the kid in school that nobody wanted their kids to hang out with. I did all kinds of things. Barely graduated high school, wrecked a bunch of cars, partied all the time. And my dad got sober in like 1990.
Okay.
He went through the program,
Right.
But he was a kind of dry drunk. He knew the program, but he didn't know God. Something got him sober, but it wasn't necessarily God.
Okay.
And he started traveling insurance, so he was gone all the time. So I did whatever I wanted.
Now, but how old were you when this was going on?
About a freshman.
Okay.
My mom and stepdad had separated, and I was living with my dad, and he was gone all the time. And, I'd do things, and they would buy me out of it. I wrecked a truck, had racing tickets, and the judge was like, if you'll go get your hardship, you can still get your license, and we'll work out these tickets.
Okay.
So I did it. So it didn't matter what I did, I was bought out of it. Somebody fixed it for me.
You didn't have to go to juvie or
No.
anything like that? Okay.
One time I got 3 MIPs in one night.
All right. Some people don't know what MIP is.
Minor in possession.
Okay, minor possession.
I'm a sophomore in high school.
About 15, 16 years
Yeah,
old.
and 3 MIPs in one night.
One night?
One night.
You busy girl.
And so they paid the tickets, and I just went on with what I was doing.
Yeah.
And, I didn't have any friends in school. I was sexually active. People talked about me all the time. I ended up getting pregnant as a freshman. Had an abortion because that wouldn't look good for my family.
So you say you had an abortion. And did you have any moral conflict about that at all, or was it just something that was normal to do?
Well, I didn't know anything really about it. I just knew that it was going to solve my instant problem.
Yeah. Right.
So I am, by this point, pretty far into alcoholism. I will do pretty much any drug.
Yeah.
I don't have very many friends. When you're doing those things, you don't want anybody to know. And
Right.
then I was looking back now, I was ashamed and embarrassed.
That's what I was going to say. Shame was probably setting in.
But I didn't even realize that's what it was.
Right, yeah. Because you were telling me earlier, and we can get into that whenever you're ready, but you had no experience with church. You didn't go to church on a regular basis, so you really didn't have a lot of maybe some of those guilt feelings that some of the kids would, but you still knew that what you were doing, or at least the way it was making you feel, was shameful.
Yeah, embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because people are talking about you.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't good stories.
Yeah. Yeah, so then there's the self-image.
Yeah.
Maybe some rejection.
Yeah, lots of rejection. And, you talk about rejection, that's pretty much, I thought I'd been pretty much rejected from probably everyone.
Yeah.
My dad, my mom.
Right.
Friends.
Because you're not there.
Yeah. And so my addiction just keeps increasing. And I'm the type of person if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 200%.
Right.
So,
we're not going to play around with this.
No. So I just didn't do a little dope. I did a whole lot of dope.
Yeah.
You get involved in this world where I was proud to be living for Satan. And I admit it. I would say that.
So did you know who Satan was?
Well, I guess I thought in your head that the little red devil with the spiky tail, and he wasn't good, and I wanted to live where that side of not good.
Did you have a concept of God, or if there was a God, or surely you'd heard about him? Or,
Well, I mean, I heard of God.
Okay.
You know, I don't know that I had a concept of what he was other than a word,
yeah,
but I knew that I liked the dark. I liked the secret. I liked that drug life. You know,
right.
My meth turned into IV drug user.
Wow.
So I shot meth, heroin, cocaine.
It's a dark road.
And it was large amounts. Like I was at a point where I didn't want to feel. And I get involved with some people, and there is sealed indictments that come out on us. And
Now, how old are you when this is happening? When you get the sealed indictments and things like that?
About 21.
Okay, so you have gone from teenager into your 20s,
Yeah.
and you've got all this underneath your belt.
Yeah.
By the time you're 21, you are carrying a load.
Yes.
So you've got sealed indictments out on you.
And I just, like, I'd never been in trouble. Well, I had been bought out of all my trouble.
Right. You never had to pay the consequences.
No, there was never consequences.
Right.
And so, you know, I'm thinking whatever these sealed indictments, it's not going to matter to me because you get probation.
Right.
That's the way the system works.
Right.
You know? And there was 21 in the case, and they bust everybody at 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, raid everybody at one time. And
Yeah.
I'm still thinking, well, I'm going to get out. This will be probation. Not knowing that the federal, because it was federal case
Right.
that picked us up, that, you know, you just don't walk away.
You were playing with
that.
big boys now, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was probably one of the first times in my life that nobody could buy me out of it.
You were stuck.
Yeah.
So what went through your head? Did you even have any inclination to call on, that thought to call on somebody bigger than yourself, or your mom or your dad or your boyfriend or your cousin, your aunt, whatever?
Well, you know, so my mom is still in her addiction, and
Okay.
we didn't have the best relationship. And so I didn't really have much to do with her. I called my dad, and he was pretty fed up with me. He was kind of washed up.
And he
Done.
was out of his addiction, or
Yeah.
it was recovery.
Yeah, he was in recovery.
Okay.
And I don't think he realized as bad as it was either. And so, you know, I'm in county jail, and I've never been in jail. And that was a shock.
I'm sorry, is this in Texas?
Yeah, it was in Lubbock, Texas County.
Lubbock
County jail.
Yeah, I spent 30 years in Lubbock. I'm quite familiar with
Yeah.
that.
And so I'm in a single cell for fighting. And so you get 1 hour a day in the break room or whatever it's called, where you can shower and use a phone, but you're by yourself.
Yeah.
So I am told that if you sign up for classes, that you can get out of your single cell. And so there was the Methodist and the Baptist and the Catholic and whatever. So I'm signing up for everything there is.
Right. Just to get out.
To get out.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're in there by yourself. You miss people.
Nobody wants to be secluded. Right.
No.
Yeah. Even if it's with the other drug addicts, I want to be with somebody.
I wanted to see somebody's face.
Yeah.
And so I would go, and they would ask me, you know, what religion are you? And I was like, I don't know. I just came to get out of my cell. And so, of course, they were teaching me different things, and I don't know that I was really grasping all of it. And they gave me a Bible, a paperback Bible, and
Yeah.
it was the King James version.
Right. That
Well,
must
help
have
me,
been.
Jesus.
That must have been like, what in the world
Yeah.
is this? Yeah.
And so I went to this one class they had, and it was these 3 elderly women, and They told me there was different versions of the Bible.
Yeah.
That they would get me a different version I could understand. And
Right.
they told me about praying and what praying meant, and that I could have faith by asking God. And so I was looking at like the 20-year sentence, because the mandatory minimum, it was conspiracy to manufacture.
That wasn't probation, was it?
No. And so
Wow.
the federal used conspiracy because you can't get out of that.
Right.
Two people talk about it, you're guilty.
Yeah, you're guilty. Yeah.
And so the minimum on that is 20 years. And one of those ladies is like, that's not what you're going to get. God is saying that you're not going to do 20 years. And so the morning I go to court, I'm up early.
Hang on, I got to ask you something. You've had no experience with God, and all of a sudden this lady's telling you God said.
Yes.
Are you thinking she's a wackadoodle? Or,
No.
No, by then you had started to.
No, I didn't know, but I believed her.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, like, there was something in her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep, there's something you
And
saw.
you just knew there was
Yeah.
something in her.
Yeah.
And so the day I go to court, nobody's up because it's early in the morning, and I'm at the metal picnic table, in the cell, and I get down on my knees for the very first time, and I'm thinking, okay, that lady says if you pray, something happens, and I prayed.
What'd you pray?
I don't even know, and I think God probably honored that
Absolutely,
because it was
I know
so
it did.
raw.
Yeah, it was.
It was just, here I am. That
Yeah.
lady says you hear me,
Yeah.
And so I go to court that day, and a couple days later, I'm in my single cell. And this lady comes and stands out beside my single cell and is reading from the Bible.
You remember what she was reading?
I don't know.
Okay.
I look back now and know that God sent me that angel.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know her name. She'd never been there before. She never came back, ever.
So you don't even know if that was really a lady. It may have been an angel.
Well, I believe that what God sent her,
Yeah,
human
yeah.
or angel,
Right. Absolutely. I get it.
to speak to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need what that lady has. I got to have that to survive. So about 3 weeks later, I signed up to be baptized. I don't know that I even really knew why people got baptized or really what it meant, but I was so convicted I needed to be baptized.
Yeah. Yep.
So they brought a horse trough in county jail, and we're in our jumpers. And
Yeah.
They baptized us.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I end up going to prison, and when I got to prison, my cellie was a Baptist preacher's daughter. And so I believe that God didn't put her in there,
Right.
but God knew I needed her.
Yeah. He works all things together.
And so I would read the Bible and have questions, and she could answer things for me. She was breaking it down in layman terms so I could understand
You understand it, yeah, because that King James can be pretty difficult.
And so she would go to church with me.
Yeah.
During prison, I went to church, I read my Bible, I did Bible studies. And, I believe that I was on fire for God.
So you were sensing and you were seeing there was a transformation going on, at least in your heart
Yes.
and your mind. And I don't know if it was manifesting physically or not, but God was working in you.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I can remember when it was time to get released, and I was so scared of the real world.
So how many years had you done it at that time?
It was almost 5.
Almost 5. Okay.
Yep. And I was so scared to come back into the real world because
Right. Sure.
I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to think. Like, I didn't even know how you had a normal job.
Because you'd never had one, had you?
Well,
Or
I
did you?
did, but I drank and used my addiction and everything. So I'd had jobs.
Several, maybe.
But yes,
Yeah.
but it wasn't sober.
Right. That is a whole new ball game.
And so I get out of prison and I come into a halfway house. And I still have these feelings of embarrassment and
Right,
shame.
shame.
Like, I knew God, but I hadn't been delivered or healed.
Yes.
And I meet a guy in the halfway house, and he'd been to prison like 6 or 7 times, and I think I
so
fall in
hand-headed.
love.
Yeah.
And I want you to know that I loved God, but I went back into addiction. I went back into using with him.
Yeah. And that happens.
And the thing is I knew God, but I don't think I had a relationship with God. And so, it's by the grace of God and the favor of God, I didn't go back. I was faking my UAs. I was making urine.
Right.
I was using this whole time.
You were back to your conniving
Yes.
and all
Yes.
that good stuff. Yeah.
But I had Jesus or God this time.
Right.
And we were in a motel, and I OD'd on cocaine,
Oh, wow.
and he left me.
Just
to
left
die.
you.
Yeah.
Wow. That was, that's not what love is.
No. And it's a miracle I didn't die. It was truly God's hand on my life. I didn't die.
So somebody finds you? Did you come out of it? What
Well,
happened?
I laid there for a really long time. And I can remember in my head thinking, if I can get out of this motel, I'm never going to leave God. And some point, hours later, I got up. And 2 days later, I'm in a restaurant, and this girl I'd used drugs with for a really long time showed up. And she goes, I don't use drugs anymore, but I love God. Do you want to go to church? And I'm like, yeah. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
I trusted her.
Right.
She knew my past.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
What if
why
I got
not?
to look? Yeah, absolutely.
So I started going to this church, and it sucked. My friends were going to the bar on Saturday night, and they would call me Sunday morning, tell me who they saw and how much fun, they were having, and here I was going to church on Sunday morning. And I can remember one Sunday morning in this Sunday school class, I just basically was like, this sucks.
You just said what's on your mind.
Yeah, this isn't fun. I'm struggling, and
It was religion.
it was. And so, I changed Sunday school classes to begin with, found a different one.
Same
And-
church?
Same church.
Okay.
And so then they say you need to go to a life group. Okay. So I would go to a life group, and I would try. And the first thing was out of my mouth is, I'm a felon, I've been to prison. What do you think? And I watched these people's reactions to see if they were going to reject me or receive me.
Yeah.
Well, the one group that didn't reject me, well, they got me,
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm going to this life group. And by this time, I've changed my friends.
Right.
I've submersed myself in a
Community.
women's study, Sunday school, church. I mean, as many activities, that you could go to keep you out of trouble.
Yep.
And they tell me in this life group, you got to listen to Christian radio. Whatever comes in you comes out of you.
Garbage in, garbage
Yep.
out. It's
So I
basic,
did it.
simple. Yeah.
So then
You sounded hungry, like you were
I
hungry.
was so hungry.
Yeah.
Whatever they would have told me, I would have done.
Yeah.
So then I was telling them in this life group, I'm walking in this shame and all these things. And they said, well, our church has some Christian freedom ministry. Okay, sign me up.
What is that? What was your Christian freedom ministry? What,
So they basically use God and the Holy Spirit to walk through your issues
yeah,
to heal you.
that's right. Okay.
And so I'm delivered from a demon when they're praying for me, I can't breathe.
Just one, because it
Well,
sounds
I
like
don't know.
you may pass.
I'm a brand new Christian.
Right,
I
yeah,
didn't even know
absolutely,
that
yeah.
you could be demonized,
Demonized or
whatever,
possessed
whatever.
or-
But
yeah.
I'm sweating and my eyes are bulging out and I can't breathe,
Right, right,
and
right.
I don't want to
that
let this
oppression.
thing go
Yeah,
because that's what I'd
That's-
known for so long.
that is the big secret right
Yeah,
there.
sometimes you want to keep what you know.
It was familiar. What
Yeah.
makes you feel good.
Because the
It makes you
unknown
feel
is,
safe. Yeah.
Yeah, unknown is way scarier.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that.
And so, I go back to this life group and I was like, hey, I was delivered from a demon today. They were like,
How did that go
"Whoa,
over?"
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yep, pretty sure.
Are you back on drugs again?
Yes, and so by this time, God has given me a job delivering pharmaceuticals. I'm still on paper.
That's exactly the job you need.
Millions of dollars worth of drugs.
Oh, wow.
Legal.
There was temptation there. I had to be.
Well,
No?
there wasn't.
Wow, that's
To me,
awesome.
that didn't even sound weird that I was delivering pharmaceuticals to mom and pop drugstores, still on paper, out of prison.
I was going to say, how would you even do that being
Well-
a convicted felon?
Well, God. So I applied for this job, and I had done it for several weeks. And
Okay.
my probation officer says you have to tell him because it's third-party risk.
Okay, so they didn't know you were a
No.
felon. Okay. All
So
right.
I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm making money.
Right. That's
legit
stupid, man. I've
job.
got a good job and
Yeah.
I'm staying clean, but yeah.
And then I'm like, what would I do without this job? So
Right.
I go in and tell the guy's a Christian.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you've done so good so far. I'm just going to let you work here.
Oh, wow.
So I'm delivering pharmaceuticals, and my van slides off the road and messes the tire up in rain, and I had to get new tires and rims, and it had cost quite a bit of money, and I had to
Yeah.
borrow the money from my dad. And so I have these brand new tires on, right? Less than 100 miles. I'm driving down the road one day, interstate, and I see this car on this side of the road with a flat, and I'm like, I wonder what I would ever do, because I don't know how to change the tire.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm out in the middle of my route, running about 75 miles an hour, and I feel this little on my car. Pull over to the side of the road. I've literally had a blowout on the front tire.
Oh, no.
It's a miracle
Brand
that
new tires.
the car didn't roll over
Yeah.
running that fast.
Yeah. I've done that at 100 miles an hour.
So I pull over, brand new tires, less than 100 miles on them. And I'm like, okay, God, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
So I go to pick up my cell phone to call my boyfriend, and my cell
Right.
phone doesn't work,
Oh, no.
and it starts raining. So I pull out the owner manual, and it's reading on how to change a tire.
Yeah.
So I am talking to God. You
Yeah.
think you real? What are we going to do here?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm telling you, I bust lug nuts on this tire, and I've since changed one and couldn't get those lug nuts off.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it came out of a body shop. So they had put them lug nuts on their tire. tight.
With the air ratchet,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah.
And I am doing this tire, and somebody says, do you need help? And I turn around. There's this man standing there, and he has a gold cross around his neck. And it is shining. And it's raining.
Yeah.
He said, well, I got up past that curve right there, and God told me to come back. He has one of those fancy tire jacks that you have in a tire shop
Yeah. Yeah.
in the back of his car. Huh, imagine that.
Imagine that. Go figure.
So he goes and, helps me finish changing the tire and drives off, and I'm still standing there. Rain stops, my cell phone starts working.
That's crazy.
So God wanted me to trust him,
Yeah.
not the man.
Right. Not your own ability, not in
Yes.
somebody else, but
Yeah.
trust him for what your needs are.
So to me, that was another angel God sent me.
Yeah.
So I go back to that life group. Hey, an angel came today. And they were like, really?
Yeah.
Yep, sure did.
What are you doing? Are you smoking some more?
And
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
my thought because I wasn't bound by religion.
Well, we'll get to that later, but yeah, because that tends to hold us back, I think,
Yes.
sometimes, receiving from God, receiving that healing and everything else, because we're so bound up in that religion, we got to cover it up, or we can't talk about it, and you are just Kelly, and you just speak in your mind.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that's why you went to church, because you were broken
Yeah.
and you needed healing.
I think that a lot of us would be a lot better off if we thought that
And
way.
I didn't know that you hid stuff. So I was sharing everything in this life group, everything.
Oh man, those people probably had a hard time sleeping at night.
Well, it was growing.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
growing. And later they had said had something to do with me, but I didn't know that at the time.
Right. Is that transparency,
Yes.
that honesty,
Yes.
and that breeds trust?
Yeah. So I borrowed some money from my dad to pay for those wheels, and my dad doesn't really believe there's a God, you know. And so I was asking him in the life group, how do you tithe when you owe somebody? What's more of a priority?
Right.
And they were like, tithing. And I said, well, how do I tithe and pay him back when he's not a believer? You know, so we had this discussion on it. And so a couple weeks later, I'm at life group, and the life group, one of the leaders says, here, I have this check for you. And it was like a $5,000 check.
Wow.
And, you know, this was 25 years ago. That's a big check.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money today.
Right.
You know.
And I said, you know, my thought was, you're going to trust me with this?
Yeah.
I'm a liar, or I was a liar.
Right.
I was a thief. Like, how you know I'm really going to use this not for drugs
For
or
drugs,
something?
or just go buy a new car
Or
go-
whatever.
Yeah.
And nobody had ever really trusted me like that. And I tell him, I don't deserve this. And he goes, I know you don't. That's why I'm giving it to you.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, that point radically changed my life. See, that man believed in me
Yeah.
when I didn't even believe myself. That man loved me when I wasn't even loving myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, I think that's what it takes. Somebody believing in you and somebody loving you long enough till you can figure that out.
Isn't that what Jesus does for us?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That man was Jesus on flesh on earth.
Yes.
For me.
Yeah, and that's what we're called to be.
Yeah.
The hands and feet of Christ.
Yes. And you know, so I'm going to church. I'm walking in freedom. I'm learning about tithing. Then I meet a man, and I never thought I'd be married, because who
So
would?
is this our man, my brother Doug?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So why would any man
And not my real brother, but
Right.
yeah, brother in Christ. Yeah, we
want
had
to
the
be
same
with
birthday.
somebody as dirty as I was?
Yeah,
You know, I
he-
would sleep with anyone.
Right.
I'd had abortion. I didn't even know who the father was.
Yeah.
My stepfather had sexually abused me. Like, to me, now the word says
You were damaged goods.
Yeah. You know, though your sins are like scarlet, you shall be white as snow. You know, that's what the word said. Who was going to see me in that light?
Right.
Well, he did. And the funny thing is he knew everything about me. Now, I had to chase him down, because he's not that type, you know.
Yeah. He's
But-
kind of quiet too. He doesn't
Yeah.
say a whole lot.
So we'd show up, me and my best friend at the time would show up everywhere he was playing.
Yeah.
He does worship.
Yeah.
It took him a little bit to figure that out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but he did.
Yeah. He did worship for my revival, and Doug is an anointed worship leader.
Yes. And so,
And you two are total opposites.
Well,
He's quiet, and you
yeah.
just say what's on your mind.
so I said basically the only thing we had in common was Jesus.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
what
and that's
more
all-
important to have in common?
Amen.
And I think he brought some balance, and I kind of, you know, had him lift up a little more than maybe normal.
He's a steady Eddie.
Yeah.
He's just solid as a rock.
Yes.
And he's exactly, God knew exactly what you needed.
Yes. And he's a little bit older than me, and that's something I needed too. I mean,
Yeah.
I you know, I needed stability, and
Right.
he had lost his wife about a year prior to cancer.
Yeah.
And she had had a long battle. So, you know, I just thought of this, how God works. So I'm tending a church, and me and this guy would go into hospitals
Yeah.
and pray for people as our Sunday school. So we would just go up to the hospital floor or whatever and ask, what room needs prayer? And they would send us to rooms. And
Yeah.
him and I both were prophetic. And so I kept a ledger of like who I prayed for.
Right.
Well, My husband, his wife, had been in the hospital for a long time on hospice. And in my ledger, I had went in twice to pray for her.
Wow.
And he wasn't there, but I had went in to pray
It's a small
healing
world, isn't
over
it?
on her.
Yeah.
And didn't realize it until after I had met him, and the Holy Spirit reminded me of
Yeah.
my ledger.
That's
You know, and
that's
and
God.
what are the odds?
Yeah.
You know?
There are none.
No,
Yeah.
that's God.
Yeah.
So he has an 8-year-old daughter, and so we get married. Some of his friends felt like it was way too fast.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be.
You know,
yeah,
there's always
what are you
those
doing?
sayers,
And,
yeah.
yeah. Then she's a lot younger than you, Doug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so I know there was some kind of hard feelings
Sure.
over that. And so we got married. In the meantime, I had gotten a job at an engineering company.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
I'd never turned on a computer. The guy in our Sunday school class owned an engineering company. And so he let me clean the building for my
Yeah.
salary
Okay.
and work with the computer during the day and taught me AutoCAD drafting.
Wow.
So, you know, that was the second job God had given me.
Right.
And I'd worked there. And when I met my husband, that's where I was working. And so then we had kids. We decided to have a kid. And we had Meredith. And I wanted to stay home with her. I felt like I wanted to raise my kid. I
Right.
wanted to do better.
You did not have that.
Yes.
And so you wanted to give that to your child.
Yes. And, you know, by this time, I've had a lot of bondage broken off, word curses. I'm walking in freedom.
Right.
And I was so scared that I didn't want her to have to live what I lived through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I didn't want her to have to wake up at night afraid.
Because now you see the contrast.
Yes. It's huge.
Yes.
You know, I had a friend that knew me in the past that said if God could do something with me, he could do something with anyone.
Anybody, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
And so, you know, there's not as many temptations because I am so afraid that I never want my kid to have to experience that.
Right. Yeah. No.
You know, I've done tons of freedom.
Right.
By this time, I have a relationship with Jesus.
Right. Right.
And that's totally different.
And you've got a normal home.
Yes.
You've got a home with real love. Now you know
Yes.
what love is.
Yes. You know, and I do have to say our marriage hasn't always been easy because
No marriage is.
of the baggage I brought.
Right.
You know, there's days I trust, there's days I don't. There's, and that's
It's
a
a
battle in all those.
The flesh will always
Yeah.
be in that. It'll always try and come back.
Yes. And I think the devil sometimes didn't have to do a lot because we do it in our own mind.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like your
No,
mind
yeah.
can be your worst enemy.
Your worst enemy. Yeah.
It can build you up and it can deflate you in no time.
So, and I don't want to run out of time, but you've got a testimony
Yes.
about where you work now.
Yes.
Because I think that is so powerful.
Yes. So I stayed home raising my daughter, and I became her Sunday school teacher. When
That's
she went to
cool.
Mother Day Out, I went
Yeah.
to be her Mother Day Out. I worked there.
Yeah.
And
No,
so
that's great.
She was going to start kindergarten. My husband's like, she's got to go to school some point by herself. And I was like, no, she doesn't.
Come on,
I'm
Mom.
getting a job. So I applied at the school as a convicted felon.
Convicted felon of drugs, federal offense.
Yes.
You can't get a job at a school like that.
No, well, you would think not.
Right.
And so I fill out the application, and I've always been honest. When I fill out the application, I'm a convicted felon.
Right.
So the superintendent at the time calls me and says, we have a problem with your application. And I said, well, I figured probably would.
Yeah.
And so he said, no, you don't understand. We've done a federal state background. Nothing shows up. We've ran everything that we can run, and nothing shows up.
Wow.
And he said, can I visit with you? He said, because you have a lot of history with kids, because I worked at the church.
Right.
I worked at a Mother's Day Out. And
Right,
so
right.
I took some letter of references and met with him. And he said, I'm going to hire you. He said, I'm going to keep these letters of references. He said, because in case it ever comes back on the 10 o'clock news.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
no, that's probably a good thing.
So I called the school and tell them they're hiring me. They got a job for me. And they were like, we don't. And I was like, God told me I was coming to work in this school, you know? And so I get on as a part-time sub for a year.
Okay.
And I worked for a solid year. In the meantime, we have a new superintendent.
So the old guy's gone.
Yes.
Oh Lord, that could put a kink in anything.
Oh, yeah. New guy didn't know what was coming. So anyways, they go to hire me at the school board and reran my background, and it showed up.
Oh, man.
So he calls my principal and says, do you know she's a felon? She said, yes, I do. He said, oh, okay.
Okay.
So he calls me into his office, and we talk, and they really got to hire you then. I'd done worked a year.
Right. Yeah. Hey, I've been there. And
I mean,
I've been doing the job. Everybody
right.
likes me.
Yeah, I'm good at it.
Yeah.
So that day I was leaving the admin office, and I'm like, why now, God?
Yeah.
Why now?
Yeah.
And he said, I never want you to doubt I put you in there. I gave you this job.
Right. It wasn't Kelly and her fantastic
No.
personality.
No.
Or tenacity.
No,
Yeah.
it was him.
Yeah.
And so there was no doubt it was because of him I got that job. I've been there 9 years, 8 years full-time, 1 year full-time sub. And last year and this year, I thought I needed to leave. I just, felt like, okay, maybe I need to go somewhere else. And you talk about doors slammed in your face.
Yeah.
No callbacks, nothing.
Right. Yeah. God says, no,
No,
I brought you here and
exactly.
you sit your butt
Yes.
down.
I wanted you to know I put you in there, and you're
Yeah.
going to be there until I'm done
Until
with you.
I'm done with you. Yeah.
And, I use my testimony all the time. I have not shied away with being a felon.
What are those teachers down there? How they receive you? Because, it can be like church. Some folks will go, well, I don't know what she's doing here. She got no business in
Yeah.
around kids. She's a felon.
And, some of them think I'm joking in the beginning when I joke about it.
Yeah.
The ones that know me know me.
Yeah, right.
But most of them will tell you that God put me there.
Yeah.
I mean, he gave me anointing to work with kids, to have
Yeah.
discernment. And so, I like working with troubled kids.
Sure.
I heard it one time, this Christian speaker said, you can change a life in 3 minutes a day. And I have taken that and ran with that.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sometimes as kids, you never spoke your name. Maybe you're not said hi. Maybe there's not kind words spoken to you. And if I can look a kid's name in their face, call them by
Call them
name,
by their name.
and say, have a good day, that literally could change their life.
Isn't that what God does to us?
Yes.
He calls us by our name.
Yes.
Speaks words of
Yes.
comfort, encouragement over us.
Yes. And I wonder if maybe somebody would have done that some point in my life. Maybe
Yeah.
my life would have been
Right.
different.
God took your mess
Yes.
and turned it into a message. I know that's real Christianese and kind of,
Right.
being commonly said, but it's really true in your case.
Yeah.
I mean, he took for lack of better words, a screwed up little girl.
Yes.
Who had just been mistreated, abused, unloved,
Yeah.
and treated pretty much almost like an animal,
Yeah.
and just changed your whole perspective on life. He changed your heart.
Yes.
But it wasn't all sunshine and roses and unicorns and rainbows, was it?
No.
I mean, there had to be some struggle along the way.
Oh, yeah. And, there's people that say God takes their addiction away and they never had it. Never struggled again. And,
Right. I call sometimes BS on that, but it happens. I'm sure it does.
I wasn't
What,
that
I
one.
wasn't that lucky. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And, I think there's times that, maybe necessarily I don't struggle as much with drugs or alcohol, but food.
Yeah.
I struggle with addiction of food today.
Food can be a very comforting
Yes.
addiction that makes you, it brings you familiarity and comfort.
Yes.
And so, and so instead of getting that from the Father,
Yep.
we turn to those things, and it can be anything: riding motorcycles,
Yeah.
shooting guns, eating food,
Yep.
you know, drinking too much chocolate milk. I mean, whatever it is
Yeah.
that gives you comfort and replaces God,
Yes.
it can be detrimental to your emotional health, your spirituality.
And I've gotten better over the years, but that struggle has never completely gone away. But I think sometimes,
We wrestle not against flesh and blood.
yeah, but if God would have delivered me instantly, would I be where I am today?
Yeah. No, that's
Would I need to turn to him as hard as I need to turn to him?
it keeps us dependent, doesn't it?
Would I need to seek him
Yeah.
the way I need to seek him?
Right.
And it might be that way for some people, but those things keep me humble, and being humble is where I need to be.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, the reason I started the show was to help encourage former inmates, man, that don't want to go back, and that it's not all unicorns and rainbows. It is a struggle.
Yes, it's real.
And we need to stay humble. And I call it my spiritual trifecta. You got to have the Word.
Yeah.
You got to have a prayer life.
Yep.
And you've got to have fellowship
Yes.
with like-minded believers. It's like your life group, man. Your life group practically changed your whole outlook on church, and it gave you a sense of, when you got that money, the way you felt.
Yep.
They trusted me.
Yep.
They loved me. That was a turning point in your life.
Because of who those people are is mostly why and who I am today.
Yeah.
And a lot of them I don't have contact with. A lot of them may have not have thought about me.
Right.
But there's so many times that I think of them because they didn't reject me, because they accepted me right where I was. Like sometimes religion rejects people because they're muddy.
Right.
Jesus washes the mud off your feet.
Yeah.
And that's what those people did for me.
Kelly, I want you to take a couple of minutes and look at that camera and speak to, whoever's listening, and maybe they weren't a former inmate.
Yeah.
But you went through sexual abuse as a young child, as an adult, and you went through drug addiction, and you went through the shame. And what can they do? Give them hope and encouragement, who they need to trust in, and that they can get through it.
Yes. So, I think God is where you need to be focused. But sometimes that scares people, But I know without a doubt you can be, you can trust God. That, I had an abortion. I murdered, and God still loved me. I was an IV drug user, and God still loved me and accepted me. And so I don't even think that if you're doubting yourself on maybe some sin or shame you're walking in, that there is no reason whatsoever to have a doubt that God won't love you, God won't help you, God won't direct you where you need to go. And if you're searching for something and you're looking for something, that's a simple answer. It's God. And I guarantee you, it may not be easy in the beginning, but I guarantee you walk with God and you'll never be the same.
Amen. Kelly, I thank you so much.
Thank you.
Give your husband a smack on the head for me.
I will.
And Meredith too. She's a little pistol, but she is. I want to talk a little bit about her, because you've got this child who you were just telling me earlier when we were outside talking.
Yeah.
She led the communion service.
Yeah.
And so you have trained up this child in the way that she should go. That has got to bless you.
Well, so my husband leads worship, and she's got to lead worship with him a couple times.
Yeah.
And, watching that, Doug was proud.
Yeah.
I was proud. But think about my Father in heaven,
Wow.
how that honored and glorified him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, my child will never, well, why, right now, she'll never have to live the way I did. Now,
Yeah.
she has her
She
own
owns
free will.
Free will, right?
But I know she has a relationship with Jesus.
Yes. She
And
is headed in the right path.
She is headed in the right path. And, you know, I don't drag her to church. She wants to go,
Yeah.
you know?
What a contrast
Yeah.
from where you were to where your daughter is. That has to bless you, bless your husband, and like you said, bless the father to see how he took this little messed up girl
Yeah.
and created this life where it glorifies God.
Yeah.
And that is the key
And you
thing.
know, the thing is, I'm nothing special. But God still took time to care about me.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Man, I love you, and I've been looking forward to this, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for asking me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, stay tuned. We're going to have another episode of Life Out of the Box coming up. Remember, this program is on the Now Network and video on demand. Share it with your friends. Tell everybody about it, and you can find it on YouTube too.